Hello and welcome to another Fiduciary Friday. My name is Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, a registered investment advisory firm. What we do on Fiduciary Fridays in our 401k and beyond Facebook group, we take a look at a retirement plan. So that plan could either be submitted by a group member, it could be something that's in the news. Maybe they have a lawsuit or something that just came out against them. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different. This is sort of our vacation edition. So we'll do something fun here. We'll talk about a couple destinations people might be headed to this summer. We're going to look at the Disney retirement plan, and we're going to take a look at the Universal Orlando retirement plan. So we're going to talk about fees and expenses. We'll take a look at the investment lineup, some of the plan design issues, and then we'll look at some other rating agencies and rating companies and see how other websites rate these plans. One of the things that's important to note here, sometimes we're looking at some old data. So you've got 5,500 filings. So right now we're looking at sometimes some data from 2019. It gets filed in 2020. So there can be a lag on some of this stuff. With these bigger plans, there is more information available, which is helpful. But if a company just made a recent change to their investment lineup, or with the environment we're in, we've had some companies temporarily suspend their match and put it back on. So, this might not be the most current information. So if you happen to be an employee at one of these companies, obviously refer to your documentation that your employer provided. But we're just going to work through based on what we know here and talk about some of the options and how we score this plan. A reminder that this video is just general education. Nothing shared in this video should be considered any specific tax, legal, or investment advice. And certainly don't act on any information you see in this video without first consulting your tax, legal, or investment advisor. So one of the things we do is we go to the Department of Labor website, and they have a 5,500 search engine there that you can take a look at. So every retirement plan, no matter the size, has to file this form 5,500, and that data is publicly available. So with larger plans, obviously these are, considered mega plans even, but with the larger plans, let's say over 100 employees, there's a little bit more information. When you're filing the 5,500 short form, not as much information. But for plans like this, you can certainly see a lot of information in the 5,500, and then they'll come with an audit report that shows up as an attachment there. So a lot of good information on these plans, even though it can be a little bit delayed. For the purpose of this exercise, we're going to look at the hourly savings plan. Disney has a different plan for their salaried employees, but based on the average participant balance and the asset size of the Disney plan, it makes for a better comparison to the Universal plan. So that's the one we'll roll with here. In that Disney plan, about 70,000 participants compared to Universal Orlando with 18,000. A balance of 942 million in Disney versus 429 million at Universal. Average balance 13,000 at Disney, 23,000 at Universal. So when you think about the type of employees that they have, think of Disney as calling them cast members and things like that. We're so used to employees and participants, and they're calling them something different there. But obviously they're going to skew a little bit younger, so you're going to have lower average balance there. They're going to have seasonal, temporary part-time employees. So you'd expect that the overall balance here be a little bit lower. When you're looking across the whole 401k spectrum, based on different reports, you'll see between 55 and 70,000 is kind of the average balance for most participants at this point. So when you look at some of the plan design issues, you're eligible at age 18 for both plans. On Disney, you have a 90-day waiting period, whereas Universal, it's based on the number of hours. So folks working at Universal who don't have a lot of hours every week could take them a while to get there. So if you figure 20 hours a week for, 50 weeks, it's going to take you a year to get to that 1,000 hours, whereas you might be able to get into the Disney plan a little bit earlier. If you're a salaried employee at Universal, you're eligible right away, which is nice. As far as the match goes, once you've been at Disney a year, you start to get that match, whereas Universal, it happens as soon as you're eligible. Matching contribution, even though it's structured differently from a dollar amount, it comes out to pretty similar. So you're up to 4% at Disney, whereas the safe harbor at Universal is that 100% of the first three and then 50% of the next two. So let's say you're contributing 3% to each plan, your match is 3%. Where it gets a little bit different is between 3 and 5. So if you're contributing that 4 to Disney, you're going to get the 4% match. If you're contributing 4 to Universal, you're going to get a 3.5% match. Once you get up to 5 at Disney, they cap at 4. If you're at 5% at Universal, you're also going to get 4. So it's just kind of that range between 3 and 5 that's a little bit different. Vesting is immediate in both plans, which is nice. You have loans available at Disney and not at Universal, but at Universal, you do have the ability to take a hardship, and those are based on the IRS criteria for hardship. So you have, if you take that hardship, your contributions are suspended for 6 months. Making changes in your deferral, if you want to, go from 3 to 5% in your Disney contributions, you can do that at any time. I wasn't able to find that for Universal, but my guess is it's probably there if I were to make a guess on that. The reason being they're both on the Fidelity platform, so and I'm sure they have great links to their payroll provider, so that's probably not a big issue to make some changes there. One additional plan that Disney has available is they have a retirement savings plan that is different from the 401k. So this one's entirely funded by the company and they make quarterly contributions. You're 100% vested in that plan after 3 years of service, or if you reach the age 65. And the way they calculate the contribution rate is kind of interesting. You don't see this a lot, but it's based on a point system. So it's age plus years of service. So the first cutoff is at 45. So let's say you're 35 years old, but you've worked there for 11 years, your combined number is going to be 46. So you're going to be in the second level here and get that 6% contribution. So kind of interesting the way they do that, but that is a significant differentiator between Disney and Universal. And this plan is quite generous. From a financial wellness standpoint, they do some similar things, obviously both being on the Fidelity platform. So this is a screenshot of some of the stuff that's available to a couple of the programs that are available to Fidelity and to Fidelity participants, Disney employees. So, they're putting out some webinars and some ways to help the employees at Disney with their overall financial wellness, which is great to see. From a fee perspective, this is pulling right from the 5,500. So Fidelity here, direct compensation of 271,000. When you get into these mega plans, I mean, they're under such scrutiny right now to keep fees low. Some haven't, and they've been sued, but these plans, Disney and Universal specifically, have made changes over the last few years. They're run very efficiently. So from a fee standpoint, it's hard to really put one ahead of another. For Universal, very similar. Fidelity, and the dollar amount is a little bit over 200,000. What's the differentiator here is they're connected with financial engines. That's another opportunity for employees to get some additional investment advice from aside from some of the financial wellness stuff that Fidelity might be putting out there. It's important to note here too, the Universal plan is part of the master trust of the overall Comcast plan. So if you think about how all these media companies have gone through all this M&A activity, so you've got Disney, ABC, ESPN, all that, Universal, you've Comcast, NBC, all that stuff. So this is part of the Comcast master trust, as we said. So that allows them to have different plan designs between Universal and Comcast, but also together they can have the same investment lineup, and Financial Engines has the deal with Comcast as well. When we do these reviews, we always take a look at Brightscope. So this is a website you can go to for your own plan, and you can punch your plan information in there and look at some of the ratings. So they have the Disney, this hourly plan rated as a 59 and the Universal as a 61. So very similar ratings there. I always like to take a peek at Glassdoor as well. Remember, you've got employees and former employees putting ratings on there. So, you got to sort of take all that with a grain of salt. But Universal gets rated a little bit higher here. More interesting than the overall ratings is I like to take a look at some of the comments and see if there's anything that kind of jumps off the page at me. So this is one from earlier this year where a current employee gives it 5 stars and says there's seminars on how to use your money wisely. And via Disney, you can schedule helpful free phone call chats with Fidelity about money management, which is great. So there you have an employee who appreciates the financial wellness that's available and appears to be taking advantage of that. If there's any, fiduciary issues as far as lawsuits, I mean, we've talked about how the last, year and a half have sort of been a whirlwind for all these 401k lawsuits. And the reason being a lot of people are home and they're looking at their statements, and you had all that market turmoil in early last year in 2020. So people are looking at all the fees and the investments in the 401k and making sure they're appropriate. So this is a little bit of an older one. So this is from almost 5 years ago now. If you remember the Sequoia fund that had a large position in Valiant, and Valiant had a significant market decline, so that led Sequoia to have a market decline as an investment option. So that fund was in the Disney 401k plan at the time. So there was a lawsuit saying that the plan fiduciaries breached their fiduciary responsibility by putting Sequoia in that investment lineup. So the way that relates back to a lot of the small plans or some of the HR reps or business owners that might be watching this, it's a reminder that the companies are responsible for this kind of stuff. That investment lineup, a lot of business owners don't realize that they're responsible for an investment that goes south. So there are some things you can do that as far as outsourcing fiduciary responsibility, things like an ERISA 338 investment manager and things like that to lessen that. But when you see these big plans get sued, it doesn't necessarily mean, that the 5-person bakery down the road is going to face a fiduciary lawsuit. But what it does mean is you can learn from these examples, not necessarily the Sequoia one for, the specifics on that, but it is a reminder as you're running these small plans, if you really, care about your employees and want to put a quality plan out there, to monitor those investments and monitor your lineup and make sure that your advisor, whoever's putting this investment lineup together, is working in your best interest and providing you with the research and reporting that's appropriate. We looked at not necessarily the investments themselves, but how they're structured. So Disney, 22% of the plan is invested in Disney stock, which always makes me nervous. And that's not a market call on Disney stock. I don't like to see that much of a plan invested in a stock. And I wouldn't, my personal opinion is I wouldn't want to put company stock in any 401k plan. I just don't think it's worth it. Disney stock is obviously done well, but my opinions on that. So, you have a mutual fund, you have collective trusts. We've talked about that before. Collective trusts are similar to mutual funds in that they're a pooled investment vehicle, but you can get some discounted pricing in there. They don't have a 5-letter ticker that you can look up. It's not as easy to do research on those, but you'll see a lot of larger plans do have collective trusts. Same thing with, Universal. They have CITs, separate accounts along with their mutual fund. There's no company stock in here, and they do have a stable value fund, which is good to see. So on the service model, I'm going to give a slight edge to Universal because they have that financial engines available to employees who want to take advantage of that. Plan design, I give a significant edge to Disney because they do have that additional savings program that's 100% funded by the company, which is great. The investment lineup, give a slight edge to Universal because there's no company stock in there. And they do have the stable value fund that's available. From a target date fund perspective, Comcast is using Vanguard, where Disney is using BlackRock. You could sort of flip a coin between those two. Disney does have a socially conscious index available, whereas I didn't see one in the Comcast lineup. Overall, both really good lineups. Obviously institutional share classes. I mean, the best of the best as far as index funds and funds that are available that the least expensive share class overall. So investment lineup, again, slight edge to Universal. From a fee perspective, both run very lean. I got to give them even there. Overall, I give a slight edge to Disney, even though I like the investment lineup from Universal a little bit better. I give an edge to Disney just because that extra savings program, it's too much for to overcome on a comparison side. So we appreciate you checking out this comparison. If you've got another comparison that you'd like to see from some big companies, or if you want to look at your plan reviewed, you can certainly reach out to us. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to check out our Facebook group, 401k and Beyond. You can vote on some mutual fund reviews there, and you can submit your plan to have it reviewed. Thanks.